Moraine Blake sat still in the executive conference room of Orientech, her fingertips barely brushing the sleek surface of the table. Around her, the room buzzed with the presence of polished men in dark suits, people who never once noticed the young woman in the corner quietly analyzing every detail. It was supposed to be just another quarterly strategy meeting. For Moraine it was a test, one of many. She wasn't on the official guest list, of course. She never was. But her badge worked because her code had built half the internal systems running Orientech's entire infrastructure. She didn't need permission. She had access. CEO Aaron Steele stood at the head of the table, all confidence and charisma, talking through numbers and projections that made investors nod. But Moraine wasn't listening to him. She was watching her father. Christopher Blake sat 2 seats from the CEO, a permanent smirk plastered on his face. To the rest of the room he was the brilliant co-founder, a visionary. To her he was a fraud. Her father hadn't spoken her name in over 10 years. Not since he abandoned her and her mother in a crumbling 2-bedroom house on the edge of Phoenix. When her mother got sick, there was no help. When they begged for support, there was only silence. And now here he was sipping imported water, discussing family values, as part of Orientech's core branding strategy. She followed his career in silence, watched every press release, every rise in stock value. But this wasn't about revenge. Not entirely. It was about truth. About reclaiming the identity he buried. After the meeting ended, the executives filed out, and no one gave her a second glance. That was her power, being invisible. Until she chose not to be. She returned to her apartment, a compact space filled with screens, servers, and a wall of sketches connected by string, each line tracking the true architecture of Orientech. She didn't just want to ruin her father. She wanted to expose the entire machine that protected him. Phase 1, she whispered. The next day, a new security breach shook Orientech's cybersecurity division. Not a leak, just a subtle manipulation of their internal data stream. Enough to cause confusion. 2 mid-level executives were locked out of the system for 6 hours. Emails disappeared. Data logs were altered in ways only someone who wrote the original code could do. Moraine didn't leave fingerprints. She left patterns. Enough for the company to know someone was inside, but not enough to trace who. It was psychological warfare. Subtle. Patient. In the company cafeteria, whispers started. Was the system compromised? Was someone inside? Was it a glitch or something worse? Christopher Blake ordered an internal investigation. The IT lead, a woman named Kayla Reno, was sharp, but not sharp enough. She flagged the attack vector, but not the ghost inside it. Moraine watched from the shadows, blending in with the crowd of junior engineers in shared workspaces. She never asked for credit and no one gave it. But the systems she built, they were hers. That night, she pulled up an old photo. Her mother on a sunlit porch, frail but smiling. Almost there, Mom, she said. 2 weeks later, Phase 2 began. She created a false internal memo. A proposal for a secret AI project, unethical and unapproved, tied directly to her father's name. The memo wasn't real, but it was carefully crafted to look like it had been buried in Orientech's classified archive. She leaked it anonymously to a minor tech blog known for conspiracy theories, just enough to be dismissed but still noticed. Within hours, forums caught fire. Reddit threads popped up. Twitter exploded. Orientech went into damage control mode. Christopher Blake called the leak a fabrication, but the public didn't care. A senator tweeted about big tech running unchecked. Journalists circled. And still no one suspected Moraine. She wasn't done. Her next step wasn't digital. It was personal. She requested a private meeting with CEO Aaron Steele under a pseudonym. An independent contractor, with intel on internal sabotage. She wore a wig, colored contacts, dressed the part of an eccentric whistleblower. Aaron took the bait. In a dimly lit downtown bar, she slid a folder across the table. Inside, a mock-up of Orienteca's darkest project, one that never existed. But it used the company's design language, their trademarks, even Christopher Blake's old password style. Erin's face tightened. "Where did you get this?" "I built your systems," she said calmly. "I see everything." She left before he could respond. The next day, Christopher was called into a closed-door meeting. Orienteca's legal team started asking uncomfortable questions. Moraine had never been in the room, but it was her hand moving every piece. Later that night, as she stood on the rooftop of her building, watching the city below, her phone buzzed. A blocked number. She answered. A familiar voice, gravelly tired, said, "Who are you?" She smiled. "Just someone cleaning up the mess you left behind." Click. The line went dead. Moraine's eyes gleamed in the darkness. The storm had begun. Moraine woke up to the familiar hum of her servers, the flickering of screens illuminating the darkened room. She stretched, feeling the familiar weight of purpose settle on her shoulders. Phase 1 had been successful, now Phase 2 was in motion. Her father was rattled, but she knew it was only the beginning. She had to keep pushing. She had to make him feel the weight of every decision he'd ever made, every betrayal, every ignored plea. The breach she'd set up in Orienteca's systems was subtle, but it had sparked something in the company's leadership. Her father's paranoia had set in, and she could see it in his actions. He had always been a man of control, but control had a way of slipping through your fingers when you least expected it. And she knew just how to exploit that. The next day, Christopher Blake walked into the Orientec headquarters with a different energy. His usual swagger was gone, replaced with a tight-lipped tension. He'd received the memo she'd planted, the one that hinted at a shadowy project buried deep in the company's files. The press was all over it now, demanding answers, and the legal team was scrambling to cover up what they couldn't explain. Moraine knew he would come for the source of the leak. He would try to track down the whistleblower and silence them, but he wouldn't find her. Not yet. She watched from a distance as her father held court in the boardroom, his face a mask of authority. But it was a facade and she could see cracks in it. He was rattled. For the first time in years he was vulnerable. Her phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted account she'd set up months ago. "Kayla Reno is investigating your breach. She's closer than you think." Moraine's heart skipped a beat. Kayla was sharp, too sharp for her own good. If she wasn't careful, Kayla might stumble onto the truth. But Moraine wasn't worried. Kayla's investigation was just another piece in the game. She smiled, fingers flying across the keyboard as she adjusted her plan. She needed to throw Kayla off the scent. If she could plant a red herring, something big enough to misdirect her, it would buy her the time she needed. That night, Moraine created a false lead. She forged an email chain from an anonymous Orientec employee, detailing a series of financial discrepancies tied to an executive's side project. It was fake, of course, but it was convincing enough to set Kayla on the wrong trail. Moraine knew the type of people Kayla would trust. She was methodical, determined, but she was human. And humans made mistakes. The next day, Kayla fell for the trap. Moraine watched as Kayla emailed the falsified information to the internal legal team. It was the perfect diversion. Now, Kayla's focus was on something else entirely. Something that wouldn't lead her back to Moraine. The chaos inside Orientec continued to grow. The legal department had launched a full investigation into the supposed financial discrepancies. Christopher Blake was pulled into meeting after meeting, his face growing more and more haggard. He wasn't used to feeling this vulnerable, and Moraine relished every moment. But she couldn't afford to get distracted. She had a bigger target now, Aaron Steele. The CEO had been a pawn in this game from the start. He'd helped build Orientec into the powerhouse it was. But now he was just another obstacle in her path. She needed leverage on him, something to make him bend to her will. That night, Moraine hacked into the company's internal communications. She sifted through emails, memos, and private messages. It didn't take long before she found what she was looking for. An email chain between Aaron and Christopher Blake. They were discussing a potential merger with a rival company. One that Moraine knew would kill Orientech if it went through. But there was more. Aaron had been feeding her father insider information, helping him dodge certain regulatory checks. If she exposed this, it would destroy both of them. She had what she needed. But Moraine wasn't in the business of simple exposure. She wanted control. The next morning, she requested another meeting with Aaron Steele, this time without the disguise. She knew he would expect a whistleblower, but this time she was going in as herself. She had the leverage. She didn't need to hide anymore. She walked into the meeting with her head held high. Aaron was sitting behind his polished desk, a thin veneer of calm over his usual cold demeanor. He raised an eyebrow when she entered. "Miss Blake," he said, his voice tight. "What can I do for you today?" Moraine smiled. "You can stop playing both sides." Aaron's face flickered with confusion, but he quickly masked it. "I'm not sure what you mean." "You and my father have been working together behind closed doors," she continued, leaning in slightly. "And I know all about your little merger plan. You've been feeding him inside information, helping him avoid the law. You've been covering your tracks, but you're sloppy." Aaron's eyes narrowed. He didn't say anything, but Moraine could see the panic starting to bubble beneath the surface. He knew she had him. "I think you'll find," she said, sliding a file across the desk, "that your days of playing both sides are over." Aaron opened the file, and his face went pale as he skimmed the contents. It was all there, the emails, the evidence, the proof that he had betrayed the company he built. He looked up at her, his jaw clenched. "You're going to help me now," Moraine said, her voice low and measured. "You're going to help me take down my father." Aaron Steele wasn't the man he once was. His facade had cracked, and Moraine had only just begun to reveal the real man behind the boardroom mask. She left the meeting with the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had him where she wanted him. And in the distance, she could almost hear the sound of her father's empire starting to crumble. The days that followed were a blur of planning, strategy, and manipulation. Moraine felt the weight of each move, each decision she made, but she also felt the thrill of the game. She had orchestrated this moment for years, and now the pieces were falling into place. Her father's empire, once untouchable, was on the verge of collapse. But she knew she had to strike the final blow with precision. Her meeting with Aaron Steele had been a turning point. He had been rattled, no doubt, but he was also resourceful. Moraine knew he wasn't going to go down without a fight. So she decided to use him. He was a pawn, but one that she could control. She wasn't just going to expose him, no, she was going to make him her ally, make him believe he was still in control. She arranged another meeting, this time in a secluded, high-rise office overlooking the city. Aaron was already there when she arrived, standing by the window looking out at the skyline. His posture was tense, his fingers drumming against the glass. When he turned to face her, his eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in them. "Miss Blake," he said, his voice neutral. "I assume you didn't call me here just to rub your victory in my face." Moraine smiled, cool and composed. "Not at all. I'm here because I think we can help each other." Aaron raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident on his face. "Help each other? After everything that's happened? Think about it," she continued, walking toward him. "You know what my father is capable of. You helped him cover up his tracks, but now it's too late. The board is restless. The media is sniffing around. Your little merger is at risk, and if you're not careful, you'll go down with him." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Aaron's face betrayed a mix of frustration and helplessness. He knew it was true, but he wasn't about to give up so easily. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked, his voice low, guarded. "You'll help me finish what we started," she said. We'll take down my father together, quietly, methodically. You still want the merger, don't you? You want to come out on top." Aaron's eyes narrowed. "And what do you get out of this?" Moraine leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I get what's rightfully mine. The company. The control. My father's downfall. You'll get your merger. And we both walk away with what we want." Aaron didn't respond immediately, but Moraine could see the wheels turning in his mind. She had him where she wanted him. It wasn't about trust, it was about necessity. In this game there was no room for loyalty. It was about winning, and right now they were both on the same side. "You're playing a dangerous game," Aaron said finally, his tone sharp. "But I'm in. For now." "Good," Moraine replied, her smile cold. "I'll set things in motion. When the time is right, we'll make our move." With that, she turned and left the office, feeling the weight of the deal settle in her chest. She had done it. She had secured her alliance with Aaron Steele, and now she could move on to the next phase of her plan. She knew she couldn't trust him fully, but in this game, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. All she needed was his cooperation for a little while longer. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Moraine had learned from the best. Her father. She knew how to play the game, how to manipulate the media, the board, and the public perception. She planted stories in the press, leaking just enough information to keep the pressure on her father and his company. She made sure the board knew about the merger's risks, subtly undermining her father's authority without him realizing what was happening. Meanwhile, she kept a close eye on Aaron. He had done his part. He had planted the seeds of doubt among the other executives, making sure they were questioning Christopher Blake's leadership. But Moraine knew the real threat wasn't the board or the media. It was her father's response. Christopher Blake had never been one to sit idly by. He had his own spies, his own network. And when he realized that something was amiss, he would make his move. It happened sooner than she expected. One evening, as Moraine was reviewing some final reports, her phone buzzed with a message. "It's time. He's coming after you." Moraine's heart skipped a beat. She knew what that meant. Her father had finally caught on. The game had just entered its final round. She immediately made preparations. She had anticipated this moment, but that didn't make it any less dangerous. She couldn't afford to be caught off guard. The trap she had set for her father was now fully in motion, and all she had to do was push him into it. That night, Christopher Blake came to her office. He was furious, his face twisted with rage. His usual composure had slipped completely, revealing the man beneath the corporate facade. He slammed the door behind him, causing the walls to shake. "You think you can destroy everything I've built?" he spat, his voice trembling with fury. "You think you can take me down from the inside?" Moraine stood up slowly, meeting his gaze with a calmness that only seemed to enrage him further. "You've been destroying everything yourself, father," she replied coolly. "You just couldn't see it. You never cared about the company, only your own power." Her words stung, and for a moment, Moraine saw a flicker of regret in her father's eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the familiar mask of arrogance. "You're nothing without me," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can replace me? You're a child playing a dangerous game, and I'll make sure you lose." Moraine took a deep breath, her heart steady. She had prepared for this. She had anticipated his anger, his need to control, and now she had him exactly where she wanted him. "Goodbye, father," she said softly. With a swift motion, she pressed a button on her desk, triggering a series of security protocols that she had secretly installed. The walls of her office locked, the air vents released a harmless gas, and the entire building went into lockdown. Her father's frantic movements only made it clear how desperate he had become. Moraine stood there watching him struggle. The empire he had built was crumbling around him, and she was the one holding the wrecking ball. She had Christopher's face twisted with panic as he fought against the lockdown, but Moraine was already steps ahead. The chaos in his eyes told her everything. He knew the end was near, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. She watched him, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. She had orchestrated every detail with precision, and now the pieces were finally falling into place. The building's security systems buzzed around them, but it was her final move that would seal his fate. She had already informed the authorities about his involvement in numerous illegal activities, including insider trading and embezzling funds from the company. It had been a calculated risk, but one she knew would pay off. The police were on their way, and by the time they arrived, it would be too late for Christopher to salvage anything. "You can't do this," he yelled, his voice cracking under the pressure. "You're my daughter. How could you betray me like this?" Moraine took a step forward, her expression unwavering. "You never cared about me, father. You only cared about yourself and your empire. I learned that the hard way." Her voice was calm, but the weight of every word carried years of resentment and pain. "You abandoned me for power, and now I'm taking everything you ever cared about." She knew this would hurt him more than anything. The idea that his own flesh and blood had taken him down was more crushing than any external enemy could be. She didn't need to say another word. As the minutes passed, she stood there watching him unravel. The police arrived, and with them her final victory. Christopher Blake, the man who had once controlled the fate of thousands, was led away in handcuffs, his empire collapsing around him. His fall was swift, but Moraine had ensured it would be his own doing. With her father's arrest, Moraine officially took control of the company. The board, previously divided and hesitant, now had no choice but to support her leadership. They recognized her strength, her intellect, and her ability to get things done. The media hailed her as a symbol of power and resilience, a woman who had taken down one of the most powerful figures in the business world. But as she stood in the boardroom, overlooking the skyline that had once belonged to her father, Moraine felt a strange emptiness. The victory had been hers, but there was no satisfaction in it. She had gotten everything she wanted: control, power, and revenge, but at what cost? The weight of her actions began to sink in. She had destroyed her father, yes, but in doing so, she had also destroyed the last of her family. There was no one left to share this victory with, no one to celebrate it. Her victory was hollow. As she sat in her new office, the one that once belonged to her father, she stared at the walls, the gold plaques, the framed photos of achievements. It all felt meaningless now. She had achieved what she set out to do, but it didn't fill the void she had been trying to escape for years. She had been so focused on revenge, on proving her worth, that she had neglected the one thing that truly mattered: her humanity. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Aaron Steele, the man who had been her partner in this twisted game. He had stuck by her side through the chaos, helping her every step of the way. His loyalty had been essential, but now Moraine wasn't sure where they stood. "I heard about your father," Aaron said, stepping into the office. His expression was guarded, but there was a hint of admiration in his eyes. "It's over. You did it." Moraine looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, it's over," she replied. "But I'm not sure I know what comes next." Aaron walked closer, stopping in front of her desk. "What do you mean?" "I've won, Aaron. I have everything I wanted. The company, the power. But there's nothing left for me. Nothing worth celebrating." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the emotion she had kept buried for so long. Aaron was silent for a long moment, then he spoke, his voice softer than usual. "You've built something. You've proven your strength. But it's not just about power, Moraine. It's about what you do with it." Moraine looked at him, her eyes sharp. "And what am I supposed to do with it?" Aaron took a step closer, his eyes locking with hers. "You decide. You can build an empire like your father's, driven by control and greed. Or you can create something different. Something that lasts. Something meaningful. Moraine was silent for a long moment, the weight of his words pressing down on her. For the first time she truly considered what Aaron had said. What did she want from this? What kind of legacy did she want to leave behind? The answer wasn't clear yet, but one thing was certain. Her journey had just begun. Epilogue. A new beginning. In the months that followed, Moraine made difficult decisions. She restructured the company, cutting ties with the toxic elements of her father's legacy. She focused on rebuilding the business from the ground up, fostering innovation, and creating a corporate culture based on ethics and transparency. It wasn't easy, and there were many who doubted her, but Moraine was resolute. She knew this was the only way to truly honor her victory. As for her relationship with Aaron, it remained professional, though the bond between them was undeniable. They continued to work together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing day. Whether it would evolve into something more remained uncertain, but for now they were both focused on the future, on building something that would last. And as Moraine stood at the head of the company, looking out over the skyline once more, she realized that power alone wasn't enough. She had to find a new purpose, one that went beyond revenge. Only then could she truly be free. The empire she had inherited from her father was no more. In its place, a new legacy was being forged, one that she could be proud of.